Hello, and welcome back to the Gold Giant Podcast. I am your host, Gerell.
And I am also your host, Jose. Hello, how are you?
How you guys doing? So, today we're going to be discussing two little mini arcs, because we just finished the Arlong Park arc, and so next we're going to talk about the Roguetown arc, and then the Whiskey Peak arc, which is going to be the start of the Alabasta saga. So, we're going to start getting into some of the most memorable parts of One Piece, and I'm really excited for it. How do you feel about that, Jose?
I'm excited for it. I think the first time around when I was going through it, I was really like I was just amazed, just all the little setup that well, not little, but all the little details in the setup that was going over, and just finally paying off, and Alabasta, and a lot of awesome characters too. So I hope we can get to talk a little about them today too.
Absolutely. And this is the point where we start to notice that Oda plants some seeds that he does not come back to for many, many, many chapters, especially if you're caught up on the latest chapters of One Piece. Man, he lays some seeds that he does not talk about for like almost 1,000 chapters. But we're going to get there. And on top of that, we are introduced to one of my favorite characters and a really big fan favorite, but we'll discuss that when we get there. So we're going to do a really brief summary about the gist of what happens in these chapters, and then we're going to talk about some standout moments that stood out to us. So let's go ahead and get started. So last we left off, we just finished with the Arlong Park arc. Nami officially joined the crew as their navigator. She's officially labeling herself as a pirate, and she gets herself a little newspaper, and one of the big news events that's going on in this issue is that Luffy finally has his official bounty. So his bounty, his very first one, is the highest in the East Blue, higher than Arlong, higher than Krieg, and Buggy, of course. And he's worth 30 million berries. That's pretty good. So he is now known as the most wanted man on the East Blue, and he's really excited about that, despite the fact that that means that the Navy and, well, Navy/Marines are going to be coming after him a little harder, and he's not going to be welcome in most towns. And we get a little hint of that. So they go to Roguetown, which turns out to be the birthplace of the former pirate king Gold Roger, and this is also the place where his execution was held. So in the very first page of chapter 1, way, way back then, over 100 chapters ago, we're at the actual site of his execution, where the first page actually shows what's going on. And Luffy's really excited about that. So if he wants to go see where the execution site was held, Usopp wants to go shopping, Nami goes shopping. Everyone actually goes shopping except for Luffy. And Zoro wants to go replace the two swords that's broken with his fight with Mihawk. So I'm going to discuss that real quick, because that's its own little mini story. I believe that takes like almost 3 chapters. So he goes to the sword store, and he runs into a young woman named Kuina. Or, no, let me rewind. I messed that up. Oh, man.
No.
Yeah, you get me, right? If you know, you know.
I mean, yeah.
So he
I
runs...
think you should just. Oh, I was gonna say, I think you should just let that in. I mean.
Oh, no, I'm keeping that.
Yeah.
So,
if you know both characters, you know.
Yeah, you see why I slipped. So he runs into a young woman named Tashigi. She is a member of the Marines. However, she does not let Zoro know that. They just think that they're two normal sword nerds. And she looks just like his old friend Kuina, who unfortunately passed away when she was a young kid. She basically looks just like Kuina if she lived and was a grown woman. Same facial structure, very similar personality and disposition, same opinion on the sexes and how the female sex is viewed as far as like swordsmanship and just social hierarchy. And it is uncanny. Like, Zoro can't stand being around her because she reminds him of his best friend as a kid. And that's a crazy little narrative side story that Oda wants to introduce. So they go to the store, and she actually helps him pick out 2 swords. And she also tells the audience what the hierarchy of swords, and apparently there's these things called the Supreme grade, the Fine grade, and the OK grade, I guess. There's 3 tiers of swords that are super famous, and Zoro finds some that are of the lowest tier. And turns out the one that he's been holding this whole time, the white one, the one that he got from Kuina, is a middle tier sword. Let me pull up the actual name of it so I don't mess that up. 1 second. Yes, according to the Viz Media version, it's known as one of the Great 21. Its name is Wado Ichimonji, which translates to the Straight Road to Peace. And the main thing about this sword, especially when you compare it to the ones that Zoro gets later, is that it's just really plain. It's got a white sheath, like a white handle. It's got a white everything. Everything about it's white, and very plain guard as well. And it's super famous and really good. And the shopkeep wants to buy it off of Zoro for a bunch of money, but he's like, no, that's not for sale, obviously, because it's a treasure from his best friend. And he also gets something called the Kitetsu the Third, which is a cursed sword. And whoever wields it apparently suffers a horrible death. And he does something super cool with it. He tosses it into the air, and if it cuts off his arm, he won't buy it. But whatever. And if it does cut off his arm, or if it doesn't cut his arm off, he'll buy it. And obviously it doesn't. So it's like a I'm gonna test my luck versus the sword's unluck, and blah blah blah. And he ends up buying it and impresses both Tashigi and the shopkeep, and so he has 3 swords now. So he's good to go. The third sword was owned by the shopkeep. It was his best thing, and he said, "You know what? You're such a manly man. I'm just gonna give it to you." And meanwhile, we are observing Luffy. He's at the scaffold where Gold Roger was executed, and he meets a young lady who he's met before, apparently, and she's infatuated with him. She wants to make him her new man, and turns out she is Alvida, the woman that we met in like chapter 2, the big, chonky, freckly woman with the mace. That was a dead giveaway of who she was, because this woman is holding a mace. However, she looks different now. She's a lot more slender, her freckles are gone, and she's got like an entourage of dudes who are swooning over her. And what happened was she ate something called the slip fruit, which is a devil fruit that gives her a frictionless body. So she's able to literally slip through things. So for example, if she was shot by a cannonball, the cannonball would literally bounce right off of her, like she was never shot at. And somehow it made her lose like almost all of her body fat. I mean, aside from, her breasticles, those stayed. And she's super gorgeous now in the eyes of, normal folks. Luffy doesn't care. He doesn't give 2 shits who this woman is. And another person who she is now pals with, she has joined forces with Buggy the Clown. So he's back now. He's got all of his body parts. And if you were paying attention to the little side stories, if you're reading the manga anyway, you actually see how the 2 of them met each other and how he got the crew back together, and now they're going to take revenge on Luffy. So they managed to get Luffy stockaded, I guess. Like that thing where medieval people put you, like, your hands and your head are locked in like this wooden contraption, and they throw like tomatoes at you. They get him in one of those things. And then Buggy is about to execute Luffy via decapitation. So he's got this big old sword. He's going to swing it down. And they're both instantly struck by lightning. And Buggy is burned up. He's smoky and gross. And Luffy is completely fine because our boy's made of rubber. So he's completely unharmed. And a huge storm hits the island. He meets up with the rest of his crew because they see the kerfuffle. And they all try to run away, but Luffy is captured by Captain Smoker. He's basically the big bad marine who runs the whole town. He's known for taking down every pirate who ever goes there. And interesting thing about him is that he also has a devil fruit. And he has something called a Logia type fruit, which allows him to turn into smoke. And essentially what a Logia type fruit is that you are completely intangible. So in Smoker's case, he becomes smoke, so you can't really punch him, and he can spread his body in almost any direction. So it's like an elemental-based fruit, and we'll learn more about Logia types as the series goes on, but that establishes a brand new archetype of Devil Fruit. So we also meet a mysterious man. He is all cloaked up and such. And he actually allows Luffy to go free because he distracts Smoker. They all take off and they leave the island all happy, giddy, grinning ear to ear, ready for some more adventure. So after they leave Loketown, they are on their way to the, how do you describe it? They're on their way to the entryway of the Grand Line. And you have to go up a river that goes up the mountain instead of down the mountain, so it's kind of reversed. And once you go up to the peak, you are shot back down into the Grand Line itself, going eastward through the rest of the Grand Line. And actually, that's the proper way to go to the Grand Line. You can't just sail straight to it because you have the Calm Belt. And we actually see them going through the Calm Belt on accident. And it is just a long, massive nest of Sea Kings, or Neptunians, as the Viz Media translation uses. I'm going to be using Sea King and Neptunian back and forth. So they are officially in the Grand Line. However, as they're going down the mountain, they see this massive, massive, massive whale blocking the way. And the whale has a bunch of scars all over its cranium and nose. And Luffy, the first thing he does is try to punch it in the eyeball. But Luffy is so small, so minuscule, it's like an ant walking over you. You know, you just don't even feel him. And the whale is agitated, and Luffy shoots him with a cannonball to get him out the way. Is kind of aggressive, Luffy. And then the whale instantly swallows him up, like the story of Jonah being eaten by the whale. And they're a little confused, you know, they don't understand what's going on, because after they were swallowed by the whale, it looks like they're outside again for whatever reason. And there's like this island there, and this man who's just sort of chilling, living there. He skewers a Neptunian that looks like a giant squid, pulls him in, acts like there's nothing wrong. This is no big thing. And it turns out they are still in the belly of the whale. What the old man has done is that he just painted the inside to look like the outside, just to fuck with people, I guess. And he's been living there. His name is Crocus. He is the lighthouse keeper of the lighthouse that is obviously not inside the whale. But he also acts as the whale's veterinarian. He even says that when whales get that big, and they're known as island whales because they're the size of islands, when they get that big, they're impossible to treat on the outside. So he has to build a bunch of contraptions. Like he builds an entire canal and tunnel system within this whale. He has like a hatch on the very top of him as well. Like, it feels like this whale's kind of a cyborg at this point. But the only way for him to treat him is through the inside, because the whale has he has this thing about him where he's constantly ramming into the Red Line, the continent that's basically Pangea of One Piece. He keeps headbutting it, splitting his head open, probably giving himself some concussions if you think about it. And so he has syringes that he uses to sedate the whale to calm him down. We also run into two knuckleheads named Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine, but we will talk about those guys in a second. And there are a bunch of ragamuffins that we have joined the crew because they're incompetent. We'll talk about that later. But so turns out the story behind the whale is that he was a baby who was tagging along with a pirate crew who wanted to join the Grand Line and all that adventure and such. However, they loved the whale a ton. They thought of him essentially as family, and they didn't want him to be in trouble. Like, the Grand Line's a dangerous place, and they didn't want to put this poor whale's life on the line just for, you know, their own sense of personal gain. So they dropped him off at the lighthouse and said, we're going to circumnavigate the globe, we're going to complete the Grand Line, we're going to come back, and then we're going to take you home with us. And it's going to take a couple years. It's not going to be a very fast journey. And so Crocus agreed to watch the whale in the meantime, and the two of them waved goodbye. And that was 50 years ago. And it's apparent that the crew probably died. Or Crocus has a theory that they gave up and fled the Grand Line. He says he got that from a credible source, but who knows? So the whale is distraught. He's distressed about that. And Luffy tries to give him another reason to wait and not constantly smack his head against the wall. So Luffy basically starts fighting the whale, literally starts punching the whale out, and then the whale fights back. He just thrashes about. And Luffy can't do anything to this guy. He's massive. He's the size of buildings, and Luffy's the size of a little pea. But he gets the whale's attention. He also stabs the whale with his mast. That's a little overboard. But it gets the job done. The whale and him have this little rivalry, and he says, you know what? When I come back, we're going to have another fight, and we're going to be friends, and so you got to wait for us to come back, instead of having to wait for his original homies, who most likely aren't going to return. And so they start setting sail for the actual Grand Line, and they're joined by Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine. But that's the gist of the plot. I skipped a few things here and there, but we're going to talk about in a second. So, Jose, were there any moments in this little mini arc that stood out to you?
I do have like a funny moment that I think stood out for me. Um, I think it was in chapter 100. That was when I think there was a lightning that struck the scaffold that where Gold Roger was executed, and Buggy and Luffy were on top. Luffy was able to escape, and then Buggy and and Elvira had their own like weird little vehicles to kind of like chase after Luffy. I don't know if you remember that. Like Buggy had like the Chop Chop car,
Mm-hmm.
and Elvira had like the Slip track, and even Smoker had his own weird vehicle, which is like the blower bike,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a motorcycle powered by smoke. So in my head, I was like, "Oh, this could be like a cool Mario Kart thing with
They
One Piece
could.
characters."
Like, if every Devil Fruit user had a way to get around a little faster with their weird powers, that would be so fun.
Yeah, yeah. Then I just thought it was. I mean, I think it fits within the sense of humor of One Piece, but I still thought it was pretty funny.
Right, and I played the One Piece Pirate Warriors games, and if you play as Buggy, if you sprint with him, he actually uses his buggy car, and I'm like,
Oh.
it's really cool. So I'm like, how does he actually like get it to move? Does he like just do crunches and stuff? Like, does he just like contract his abs super hard? Like, does he have like a six pack or something? But he actually has an engine in the very back that pushes him forward, and then all he has to do is just hold on and steer.
That's really cool. I mean, a little unique, but I still think that's pretty. I think that's on brand for Buggy to come up with
Absolutely.
something like that.
Uh,
Oh man.
so another thing that stood out to me was, and this was back when Four Kids was still doing One Piece dubs and such, way back when. And Smoker, I noticed, they called him Chaser back in the day on TV. I guess because like he chases
Oh
people,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they completely removed his cigars, obviously because of the kid show. In the states, our version of kid show is different from the Japanese version of kid show, and he had like these two massive cigars that he's chomping on at all times. And so they edit those out to where he's just exhaling smoke instead of literally smoking. I thought that was interesting.
That is weird. And I know it's like a character design, but I wonder if it's like his teeth hurt after chewing or like holding those two cigars the whole time. But who
I
knows?
don't know. I mean, they got to get soggy because when you have a cigar in your
Oh
mouth for that
yeah,
long, they're going to get wet. You're not supposed to just keep them in your mouth.
because then again, he does have the smoke ability, so I don't know if if he just turns his ability around his mouth for it to kind of like hold it with the smoke, but
Or maybe
uh,
like when he inhales the cigar smoke, he gets more big, like he increases in mass or something.
oh okay,
I don't
I
know. I
see.
don't know how his
Yeah.
powers work, but I used to think he was so cool as a kid, but uh current Gerell is just like, he's kind of a dork if you ask me. Like, why are you smoking so much? Don't you know that's
He
bad
does.
for you?
But however, he does like kids, so he accidentally ran into a little girl and gave her some money to buy more ice cream. So that's still kind of cool.
Yeah, because the civilians think of him as a monster, and immediately after that, they show him just walking about. The little girl's walking into him. She has like 3 scoops of ice cream. She spills it all over his pants, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry. It looks like my pants ate your ice cream." I'm like, "Oh my god." He's such a dad. It's
Yeah,
such a dad joke. And so he gives her enough money to buy 5 scoops instead of the 3, and she's super happy. I'm like, that's sweet. So this guy is
yeah,
clearly one of the good not the good pirates. He's clearly one of the good Marines that you can actually trust. But obviously, since he's on the opposite side of the law of Luffy and crew, he's considered an antagonist. But he's someone that you can pretty much root for sure.
yeah. Of course. I think it was revealed that he was present, right, on the execution when for Gold Roger, right?
I don't
Or
remember if they showed that here. I didn't make a note of that, but canonically, yes, he was there during the execution
okay,
of Gold Roger for sure.
okay, I see. Yeah.
Because he's old enough. The execution took place 20 years before Luffy got here, and Luffy is only 17, so he wasn't even born yet by that point. So that shows that Smoker is over his 20s. I think he's like 28. Let me see.
Oh, okay.
I'll
He
pull up
looks.
his actual age in a second.
Yeah.
But what else stood out to you, Jose? I almost typed
Let's
your
see.
name into Google. Hold on.
Oh no. um, Going back into not Kuina, Tashigi. I was really once again I keep getting them mixed up, but
There's nothing wrong with that. I
I
understand.
yeah. But I liked her. I found her character very interesting too because Tashigi and Smoker are both partners within the Marines, and I think she also revealed while she was at the sword shop with Zoro that her dream is to collect all of the master swords which are all scattered all over the One Piece water. So I think that's a very interesting goal to have because not only is she like a huge sword nerd, but she has like that respect because eventually when she finds out that Zoro is a pirate and carries like a very he now carries 3 prestigious swords, she's kind of like no you can't do that, you're a pirate, you're gonna put your like pirate cooties on these really cool swords, so you have to give them to me. And Zora's like nope, bye.
Yeah, she goes into a little more detail saying that because Zoro kind of calls her out on that. It's like, oh, so you're just going to collect all the swords because I already have one of them. Are you going to take mine away? And she's like, no, I just don't want bad guys to have them. I'd rather good people have the swords. But I'm like, that's going to be a very impossible dream to manage. But good luck with that. I guess if you rephrase
Yeah.
it to where she wants to take down all the dudes who hold the super awesome badass swords and make a name for herself like that, I guess. That seems a little more tangible, but good on her. I really like the character a lot. She is absolutely such a cutie, and she is a tough, strong woman. And I imagine she would essentially be living the life that Kuina would probably be living if she survived. Maybe not be a marine,
Oh
maybe be a pirate hunter like
yeah.
Zoro used to be, who knows. But essentially, she's taking on the role of Kuina spiritually, and that's really cool. I would love to see how far she goes in the rest of the series.
Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah, I think another fun fun scene from her. I think even Zoro like told her is like you remind me of my childhood friend, so you're weird for doing that. And then Tashigi was like, "What are you even talking about? You're the weirdo for keep thinking of your childhood friend and me. So leave me alone."
Yeah, Zoro essentially just calls her gross and go away. But yeah, they start getting into like this little bickering match, and I feel like that's Oda's way of saying that they're going to have a relationship in the future. Not romantic or anything, but like they will have a recurring uh banter with each other, as in they're going to run into each other probably quite a bit on the open seas. This is going to be the last we've seen of Tashigi, especially because of how he reintroduces Buggy. Because
Oh yeah, yeah.
as far as we're aware, Luffy doesn't outright kill anybody, so most likely we're going to have recurring villains in this franchise, which I think is good for storytelling purposes.
I think in one of the SBS corners he also addressed that I forgot which chapter was it, but a reader wrote in and asked Oda, I was like, well, why doesn't Luffy just kill these bad guys if they're gonna keep doing bad stuff. And I think Oda explained it pretty good, where he was like a lot of the pirates we see follow like this pirate code of this pirate honor code where defeat is just as bad as death. So sometimes, like, if you just get beat up really bad, then you just don't have like you just don't have that pride anymore to show up again if if you're fighting, or if you got defeated that bad. So which I thought was interesting. That I know death is like it's a pretty permanent result in a fight, but uh but even like honor, like losing your honor in a fight, I think is still pretty badass too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like if your dreams are broken, you might as well be dead in a way. Like that's a close equivalent, it seems, in this universe. So another standout thing to me was Smoker's interaction with Luffy. Smoker has a weapon that apparently hits Devil Fruit users and actually hurts them. Like, for example, whenever Luffy gets punched, he doesn't feel anything. But with this weapon, if Luffy gets hit, it actually hurts. It's made of sea stone, which is
Oh
something that can
yeah.
actually hurt Devil Fruit users like Luffy. And he carries a big old billy club looking thing that's made of this stuff. And he pins Luffy down, and he ends up getting grabbed by a dude named Dragon. And he's the guy in the cloak who is super freaking ominous. The way the Oda sort of situates things is that it makes it look like he's the reason why this storm is coming. And if you think about it, I mean, for a while I didn't really subscribe to this theory, but after rereading it, I'm just like, you know what? I think he probably did start the storm because he's the only one
Yeah.
in the entire town dressed like he's ready for rain. No one else is wearing a coat, no one else is wearing a hood or even has an umbrella, and he's the only one who has a raincoat on. So I'm like, he of course he'd know. Because even Nami, our ace navigator, she didn't even know what was happening until it was about to happen.
Yeah, like she was just caught by surprise, like at the moment where she was like, "Well, I think she said like, oh, I checked earlier and there was gonna be sunny. Now it's not gonna be rainy. So what's up with that?" And so, yeah, I have a theory of that too, where it's not confirmed and it's not very clear, but there are some possible clues for that.
Yeah. And also the lightning hitting Luffy at just the right moment. Like the blade was right on his neck before it struck them both. That's a little too convenient for me, you know? And then
Yeah,
the wind flow was flowing in the direction that Luffy needed to go, like westward. And that's a little too convenient, you know? And so the thing that solidified it for me was the outfit and how he was the only one dressed for the occasion. That was a dead giveaway for me. But uh, we'll probably find out later on because Oda likes to sow seeds to reveal later on. But I'm very interested in this character and his sick tribal tats.
yeah. But other than that, I don't think we know much about Dragon. He's just kind of literally created a storm, helped Luffy, and then uh, that was pretty much it, I guess.
That's pretty much it. He's a man of mystery, and it is effective.
Yeah.
And then because I'm petty and I love little situations like this, another thing that stood out to me was Sanji. Right after all of this, uh, so after they leave Roguetown, they're on their way to the Red Line, and the snow is completely covering the ship. And so Sanji's out there just shoveling snow, and he's like, "Oh, Nami, how long do I have to shovel this snow for?" And she's like, "Until it stops snowing," and doesn't even look in his direction. I'm like, "That's wonderful." Even Zoro's like, she's got him wrapped around her little finger, and I'm like, "This dude, it's such a simp. I love it.
I know.
Hopeless, hopeless, hopeless."
Yeah. He is a good chef, but he's just still simping.
Always be simping. Uh, and another thing that stood out to me was I guess he just does that to every woman, no matter what situation they're in, because he started having goo goo eyes for Miss Wednesday.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
she just
Later
barely
on.
showed up. He didn't even know why she was there. And he was just like, "Ooh, who's that hottie?" I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh my God."
He also had Google eyes for Lavida before recognizing, or before she was like introduced that it was her.
Yeah.
Like she
Plus,
like.
he never met her when she was chubbier, so I don't think that matters to him.
Hmm.
I wonder if he's into chubby girls too, because like, is he into just all women, which is pretty progressive of him. That's pretty go. That's pretty cool. But or is he like super toxic and only cares about like hourglass figured women? That's something that remains to be seen. I'm gonna keep my eye out for that, because like
I
people
know
come
he.
in all shapes and sizes, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like that Eminem quote. Oh, like you gotta.
I know the one.
Yeah, yeah, you know the one.
Hmm.
uh, not any woman quote by Eminem, but the one where it's
The
like,
one from the Slim Shady song
yeah,
specifically.
yeah, white women, black women, all women. Yep, something like that. I
I
think.
like to use the quote from Fez from that '70s show. How's it go? Fez likes them big, Fez likes them small, Fez likes them all.
Ah, old Faz.
Oh, Fez. So I am going to get into the whole situation with Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine. So I love these two. They're such dorks. They remind me of Team Rocket, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I see those vibes too.
Yeah, absolutely. They have this weird gimmick where they have to stick their pinkies out no matter what they're doing. Like they have straight up bazookas, and they're trying to hunt down the whale to supposedly feed their family back home. Because even Crockett says if they actually manage to kill an island whale, they can survive off the meat for like 3 years, which is ridiculous. But they're holding bazookas. They got their pinkies out. They get tossed into the stomach acid because they're stupid, and they try to grab onto the landscape to pull themselves out of the water, and they still have their pinkies out doing that too. I'm like, that's ridiculous, Oda. What are you doing?
I didn't notice that. That's so funny.
Yeah, I was honed in on that like a hawk. I'm like, oh my god, are their pinkies out every time they're talking? Yes, they are. uh, and so they're interesting. They're a part of this organization that's super mysterious, and we don't know the name of the organization yet. But they have coworkers called God, what are their names? They're an otter and a vulture.
Oh, the unluckies.
Yes, it was Mr. 13 and Miss something.
I don't remember that,
Hold on.
but
Let me pull up my notes real quick. I know I wrote that down somewhere. No, I didn't. They are an otter and a vulture, essentially, and they are of lower rank than Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday. But apparently they're the enforcers of their boss. Supposedly because they were taking so long trying to kill the whale, they were going to be punished or fired. But you know, they drop a bomb on these two, so I guess it's like a permanent version of fired. Uh, but
oh,
they survive, and
I found the names if you want to know. Or...
please.
Yes, so the unluckies, the otter is Mr. 13, so I'm guessing he's a guy, and then the vulture is Miss Friday, which is the vulture. Yes.
So the crazy thing about
So,
that is, they are named after days of the week. At least the females are, and the males are named after numbers. And so we have Mr. 13. That tells me that there's 12 more people ahead of him, of course, Mr. 9 included. So we may end up meeting all of them, which seems pretty interesting. I would like to know more about this organization and just
uh,
what are they up to, because they're super sus. They're not just after
yeah.
this whale for the meat. What are they doing here?
I feel kind of dumb, but I just realized why they're called the unluckies, because it's Friday and 13.
Friday the 13th. Yep. Oda is not really subtle with how he names his characters.
Yeah.
Because I'm also a huge fan of Dragon Ball. That was one of my first introductions to Japanese media, and uh, Akira Toriyama uses puns for everything. And luckily, the books that I bought, they actually tell you what the puns were. So pretty much everyone's named after either a
Oh,
food or an article of clothing or a concept or an instrument. Everyone's names is something silly and goofy. So I'm glad that Oda is carrying the torch for that. That's great. Uh, Another thing that stood out to me was just Laboon as a whole, because whales are my favorite mammal on the planet. They're great, And Laboon, he's kind of cyborgy. My first introduction of the series, I don't remember just how many installations Croc has put in him. Like, dude has like a straight up door leading out of Laboon, just out the side of his body. That is so crazy.
That is, yeah, he's like a cyborg whale then. That's crazy.
That's
Yeah.
even cooler. I love it.
And he has like battle scars too. That just adds like the cool factor.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever look at like a blue whale up close, they get pretty gnarly on the skin. Like they have scars and all those particles and stuff. Like they look like they've seen some shit, you know.
Yeah,
But this
yeah.
one most definitely has. Yeah, this was a pretty short little back-to-back mini arc. Like Loketown was only about 5 chapters, and uh, Laboon was only pretty much 5 chapters. And we're introduced to a whole mess of stuff, like recurring villains, more devil fruits. Like we actually got introduced to 2 additional devil fruits, which doubled our roster essentially. Because for 100 chapters, we were only introduced to 2 devil fruits. But now we got the slip
Oh,
slip
you're
fruit,
right.
and we got the plume fruit, the smoker one,
Yeah.
and they're pretty goofy. You know, I mean, like, who wouldn't
Yeah.
give to have the slip fruit to just have like flawless skin and just like next to 0 body fat, you know? And then we're introduced to how the geography works in One Piece, how when we talked about this, I want to say in the Barati arc, how the Grand Line is actually sandwiched between the Calm Belt, and we actually see Luffy and crew accidentally go through the Calm Belt, and their ship is raised out of the water by these massive Neptunians, showing like just the scale of how small these guys are and how big the world is. And if I was on the ship like that, I would be freaking terrified of sea monsters of that size. Like, so far, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, they haven't been afraid of anything. They'll just go straight up to danger and just punch it in the face. But these Neptunians, they will not mess with. They were terrified of these creatures, with good reason. And uh, yeah, we just get introduced to a lot of stuff that will definitely be visited upon in the future. A lot of fun moments, and what I love about these handful of chapters that it feels almost like downtime. You know, like the best writing exercise, in my opinion, is just having your characters just relaxing in a environment where there's no imminent threat. Like the world's not going to end, no one's going to blow up the place. Just see how do they behave, how do they interact with each other. Like one of my favorite episodes of Family Guy, and I don't watch Family Guy that often, if at all, but I recall this episode where Stewie and Brian, the baby and the dog, they're inside this bank vault and they're just talking. Like for half an hour, they're just talking, and the episode is flowing really well. And in my opinion, that's a great writing exercise to not only flex a little bit, but also learn how your characters behave, how they interact with each other. Seeing their dynamic between Sanji and Nami, Sanji and Zoro, Usopp with everybody, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And this cast of characters, they're just a delight to see. And the roster is expanding. We're seeing them interact with even more people. I can't wait to see how these guys handle their little adventure. And I'm down for more. Like rereading all of this stuff, I'm like, no, I'm just as energized as I was as a kid to see what happens. You know, and this series is fantastic.
And it just keeps getting fantastic. Like there's still so much uh to be just explored within this world, and just every character just has an interesting story, has an interesting role in the whole One Piece world. And I think it's very cool to just uh to to even just like maybe try just focusing on one character and all they and their input onto what happens throughout the story. So yeah.
For sure. And so we're actually about to start with the Alabasta saga. And this is one of the staple sagas of One Piece. This is what pretty much puts One Piece on the map. We're going to take a little bit of a break from recording and uploading onto the YouTube space because we're going to try to transition into audio only platforms where we're going to upload these episodes to Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. Those are the big 3 for podcasts. We started uploading on YouTube because that was a platform I'm personally familiar with. And we're going to try to expand over to those to get more listeners in on these reviews on our little Gold Giant podcast. So we're going to take a break while I do some research on that and try to get those episodes out. So next episode, we are going to cover Whiskey Peak and Little Garden. And so look forward to that. However, we're going to be taking about a month off to get these episodes out onto other platforms to get more listeners in on the fun and try to expand our little community here. But stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Thank you guys for listening, and hope you guys have a good one. Take care out there.
Yeah, take care, guys. Thank you for listening.